Hello world. Welcome to Sleep and Eat Virtual 2020. It was my wish to welcome you all in person this November at Olympia, London, but the world is a strange place right now, and hence we are seeing each other in the virtual world. My name is Hilary Rand, and I'm the conference curator for Sleep and Eat Virtual. Informa very kindly trusted me with the content last year, and their collaboration has continued to keep the conversation about hospitality design alive, even if only virtually for now. I'm a hospitality strategy consultant, as well as a writer, speaker, and presenter at various events around the world. Over the last 8 months, I have done close to 300 virtual events, and I've traveled the world from Australia to San Francisco, all from the comfort of my own living room. But I think many of you join me in the sentiment that whilst conducting business in a virtual world has some benefits, we cannot wait to explore again, to connect again, and to experience our freedom the way we are used to. When I chose the topic for this year's conference, Redefining Freedom, and this was all the way back in the spring, I was certain of one thing, that the months that lay ahead will, with very much restricted liberties, that our lives will change, our industry will change, our behavior will change, and most likely our values will change. The sessions at Sleep and Eat Virtual in 2020 will explore the many layers of this notion, from design to operations, from east to west, from investors to chefs. Everyone is trying to find a better way forward and think beyond the mess that we're currently in. I hope the keynotes and panel discussions over the next couple of days will challenge you as well as comfort you. I welcome you to Sleep and Eat Virtual 2020. Please make sure you use the platform to your advantage. There are many networking opportunities and functionalities that the team at Informa have been working tirelessly to make as user-friendly and enjoyable as possible. As the opening session this year for the conference, we will travel both to Taipei and New York to visit Tony Chi's studio. Tony Chi, Allison Chi, and William Paley will take us through some of the studio's most acclaimed projects, which encapsulate the notion of designing to contain the chaos. First, we go to Taipei to hear from Tony.
Good day, I'm Tony Chi, and the founder of New York-based Tony Chi Studio. I would like to thank Sleep and Eat for this opportunity to connect and to take part in this important conversation, shaping the way we experience design, industry, and life as we know it. I'm currently in Taipei, where I've been residing since the pandemic. What began as a pit stop during my travel has now become a rather welcome new way of life, filled with humble days, nature walks, intimate dinners with friends and family, redefining freedom and containing chaos. What a wonderful notion to ground us in this time of reset and reflection. When we say chaos, we refer to endless possibilities for great hospitality and design experiences, but only with the right care, passion, thoughtfulness, and consideration do these opportunities have a chance to thrive. My vision for Tony Chi Studio has always been about staying small and intimate so that we can truly focus on what matters, which is meaningful purpose for design, functionality, the practice of elegant everyday life. Each and every one of our projects, whether residential or commercial, has a spirit. They are always alive and energetic, filled with possibilities and opportunities. And it is our discipline to listen and capture the essence of that energy translating into visual stories, poetry, and experiences that we hope are heartfelt. There is already an element of chaos in the idea of shaping a legacy. It implies looking forward and working towards a goal that will be meaningful to future generations, and they are themselves looking back and towards the past. How do we address the chaotic notion of time? We anchor our design process in human emotion through what I call invisible design. There is an element of time, of continuity between generations, but in building a brand like Rosewood, there's also need to be continuity across countries, across place, and continuity in collective consciousness of people. This holistic global planning gave us purpose as a designers. What we are designing are cities, and it is something far greater than just aesthetic. We are creating a story or a narrative, and that is communicated at every level of the development process. From the shape of an arrival to planning of an estate, such as Rosewood Hong Kong. How do we take something as grand and ambitious as a Rosewood Hong Kong and create moments that feel intimate and personal? That is the way how we define an invisible design. The focus on the emotion of a space rather than a physical materials and space itself. The invisible design often is how you feel. How will you tell someone who can't see about the space? How can you tell someone who can see but can't hear the space? How do we have all our senses come together to a design that harmonize as a symphony? London is also rich in heritage. So how do we fold these tradition and opulent emotion into modern narrative? The fox and the hunt, the tradition of a great woods, and the joy of hunt. At the London Rosewood, we wanted to bring this tradition to the guests and evoke the majestic feeling of being connected to nature. When guests arrived, this formality becomes part of their experience. In Hong Kong, the possibilities were endless. We're taking this estate on the harbor, surrounded by gardens, creating chambers, giving the chamber to elevate everyday life. We transform every space in a poetic fashion, allow romance through the passage of time. We embrace the heritage of the past, providing guest room floor with great salon, eliminating the unnecessary meaning of lift lobby in the modern terminology, but rather having a sitting room. And this is the greatest heritage of hospitality, as family gather before bedtime. Storytelling, music listening, celebrating a wonderful day we, friends and family, has had. And finally, we learn from the craft of yesterday to design a better tomorrow. How can we celebrate this precious gift of time and recognize its value in our design? In London, our rose gold chamber, forged by heritage Italian metal specialists. In Hong Kong, the tradition of pattern making, inlays, parquetry. In New York, the golden light of the Upper East Side. Invisible design, as you can see, when felt, is not so invisible. The most powerful stories are the ones that we can impact all those who comes across it. And that resonates across generations. As space tells a story, it creates meaning out of chaos, and this is how we define our freedom. I want to thank you all to allow this opportunity to participate and have this conversation.
We are now joined by Tony Chi from Taipei. Hello, Tony, and thank you for your lovely reflections and your storytelling with beautiful imagery that you've just taken us through. How are things in Taipei?
Peaceful. It is something that actually I am quite fortunate having a refuge in this part of the world, and I call it in the middle of the Pacific that enabled to connect on both sides of the Atlantic. That's including your good self. So the time zone in this working area is spectacular.
Well, you just mentioned place of refuge, and I know before when we were kind of thinking about different themes and what sort of happened in the world at large is the importance of the idea of home. So can you tell me a bit more about that, because I really liked your take on it.
I think the home is something that all of us have taken it for granted for many years, perhaps all our lives. The work life consumes so much of us. Getting up in the morning or sleeping late or getting up late, rushing and get dressed, rushing and catch the train, rushing and getting to the office. All these rushing in, rushing out, more or less has been our life until the pandemic, right? The pandemic came, it sort of paused the moment. Everything stopped. And I really mean the clock stopped as well. I mean, the concept of getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning and get ready to be in the office at 9 o'clock diminished it, and somehow just boom, puffed, right? And no one really thought about, home. Home is a place where I need to coexist for God knows how long. So the idea of a home suddenly all came to our mind, and this is something that I thought a great deal about, because I've done great many homes for a great many people, always about how do we craft a way of life, right? And often we all very appreciative to the British formality to a way of life. And then this is not today, perhaps. Perhaps you can go back 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Then you say, my home has everything I ever needed. And then I seldom go out, right? So everything evolves around the house. You work in the house, you social in the house, you raise your family in the house. So the perspective to a home is so different than the life we know, right, today, until this pandemic. So you look at it on the positive note, is this pandemic give us a reason to reflect about ourselves, okay, our past and our present and our future potentially. Because you often say, gee, how long is this gonna be? How long do I need to stay home? So on and so forth. This is probably a question everyone asks. And it has been for me for 7 months. When can I go home? When can I go home? So I've been asking, and last night I looked at a picture of New York, and with the beautiful foliage. I said, I missed it. I can almost smell it, right? So this is something we won't, none of us able to do in the past, because we took everything for granted. So now with this pandemic at home, whether you are forced to stay in, not go out at all, or you're allowed to go out for a little jogging and come back to the house, regardless, this intimate relationship that you are having with this tangible white box or this lovely room of yours, you need to get to know it, and it needs to get to know you. So the relationship begins. That's called the love and the hate, right? The love part is, you're so beautiful, I never noticed. Or perhaps you say, oh my God, you're horrible. How do I improve that? So all the people having the time during this time, they've done perhaps both. Okay, and this is the part that I find the most fascinating for me, to appreciate something we never really realized that we have. Okay, sorry.
No, and actually, I just had an idea and a question from that. So people have done, obviously, like you said, start to appreciate the home and the surroundings a lot more, because that's what we have to live in right now. How do you think that will affect their perception and needs when it comes to when they start traveling again and start visiting hotels again and having that sort of sense of place? How do you think that mindset then translates into what they're looking for in great hotel spaces?
Well, it's an excellent question, Hillary. I mean, listen, this is something that is absolutely excellent question. We never really awaken our own subconsciousness, right? So we travel, we always think that travel is better. The moon is brighter on the other side and the grasses are greener on the other side. Then you may say, oh, look at that lovely hotel room. But now you get to compare it. You compare it to the love to the lust. And the hotel room is the lusty part of it. Then you may say, well, I miss your lovely room, my own bed, my own pillows, etc., right? Which you took a lot of time building that relationship with. And I honestly feel that this actually could be something positive because it could elevate the provider, right? It could elevate the hotelier. It could elevate the developers. It could elevate the service industry, right? Not the service industry no longer can get away with what they have been doing, which is called the boilerplate. Now they have to say, how do I develop this invisible design and that can touch their emotion? How do I make them feel secure and safe? Right? Now, everyone can be paranoid about, oh, is it clean? Right? For example, very often we all travel in the past, and very seldom I say, well, if I come out of the shower, I will sit on the chair. That doesn't belong to me. So likely you may take a towel, you cover it, then you sit down. Right? But you will do that more so than before. So perhaps the hotel industry, which our beloved hospitality industry, may go out of our way to say, oh, when we do the turn down service, okay, I may have a nice little a cotton a slip cover or some sort, right? And just put on the seat. Or I may do it, put a piece of a cotton cloth, right by the edge of the sofa. Like you will turn down the bed and you turn down the side where you will sleep. So you will do the same thing with the sofa. So the turn down service now not just ended at bed. Now you expand it to the social area, right? So I think this sort of awareness, awakening, okay, that we as a consumer will have, and equally the developer and the provider should have. So this pandemic that we must all look at from the positive side to say, what do we get out of it, right? Not just based on, say, oh, hallelujah, now we're free, the pandemic is gone, right? 1918 with that pandemic, and now what did we learn, right? Of course, it was different time, but the emotion was exactly the same, right? Now, those days, people got much bigger houses. Today, people got much smaller houses. So what does that mean? That means today, maybe the consumer, people like ourselves, can then tell the developer, the provider, the creator, what to create to meet our need. Okay, so I do believe things likely could be different for the better, not for the worse. If it is worse, then we haven't learned anything. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And you, Tony, and your studio as designers, as creatives, kind of need to translate all of this and bring this chaos to life. So let's kind of explore this idea of how this what you said on your introduction, that chaos has endless possibilities for you as creatives. So let's explore that a bit further. Would like to get more of your ideas on this.
Right, the chaos always will find order within. Okay, you will find order also could be within chaos, right? So it works both ways.
Yeah.
And from design perspective, we always try to find where are the chaos and how do I help you to organize it, right? So our job oftentimes is taking the leadership in organizing the offering in people's lives. Then we somehow inspire them to process those things around them. So their life, whether at home or whether travel, right, gets elevated. And that create a memorable experience that they will always remember, right? And that's one thing we got. Or if one kick the bucket, say, oh, memory will stay with me. So the fact is, having this opportunity, we must, whether the creator, or the user, we all need to look for what opportunity that can bridge our emotion and our physical being. These are the two things almost have to link. I can almost assure you, all the people during the last 6 months of a pandemic, it sort of brought themselves closer together. Our mind and our body were together, but not really. Somehow they were so remotely detached. Now, with this pandemic and we're all cooked up at home, and it make us sharper, make us more sensitive, make us more thoughtful, make us more aware of anything. So all these things are a good thing. But the question is, do we take these awareness, do we take these awakening further into everyone else's life, right?
Mm.
Now that's an opportunity to organize chaos again. As you know, Hillary, oftentimes our day can be so how do I say this? Our day can be so impacted by someone else's action. And often you may say, oh my God, don't let somebody else affect your day. But it's getting harder and harder to do that, especially in the largest city like New York or London, Paris. You never know, right? There's a lot of things going on. So if the opportunity of this chaos can be contained and make us awaken our subconsciousness, perhaps, or make us better, perhaps. So this chaos will fall right into order, even within the little community of ours, right? Like in the neighborhood. And people say, well, maybe I should spit. Maybe I should throw trash. Maybe I should be aware of the hygiene issue, or perhaps I should honk the honk, right? Maybe I should be quieter. Maybe I should follow the traffic. So all these things, I really think that we're all very much aware of, and we are all obeying it, and I just want to be able to say, will this opportunity continuously help us to contain any potential chaos may or may not occur in the next stage of our life?
Well, and talking about, Tony, about next stage of our life, I mean, you and your studio have been working on multiple projects across the world in very sort of challenging conditions, you being, 10 plus hours away from your studio for the last 7 months. Tell me a little bit about how this has changed your creative process for your studio, and are you still able to work on these projects as a team and delivering this sort of great work that you're known for?
Well, this is a double-edged sword, okay? And everything comes with a positive and a negative side to it. We all learn to adapt. There's no question about it. Therefore, it's not up to me. I am kind of a guy like to touch. I like to be able to show. I like to be able to be there. Now, with this pandemic and with this 8,000 miles apart, we do the best we can with any type of technology to bring us closer. And of course, it comes down to the communication method, right? Now, we all have a different way in communicating. In my way, oftentimes it is show and tell. Let me show you how I connect the dots. Now, once I show you how the dots being connected, now voila, now you see the pictures, right? Unfortunately, being 8,000 miles apart, and that's hard to do. So you need to somehow take someone's emotion and guide them through a passage in the space, right? Hopefully they don't get lost in the black hole. Right? So when you're talking to your group of designers, it sounded very abstract, but it depends on how we emotionally connect. If someone had worked with me or for a long time, or has been working with me for, let's say, 10, 20 years, they can sort of read between the words, right? They can sort of see what's coming. But then when you have a younger designer, or perhaps somebody I haven't worked with in the past, then there's a lot of guessing. And this is go for both sides, right? So I need to guess to say, oh, do you think he understand or she understand it? or maybe not, but let me repeat. So working remotely, I've been doing a lot of redundancy, right? That's why I say, I have been on the treadmill, not just physically, but emotionally and verbally, right? So verbally, I repeat quite a bit just to make sure they get it. Then of course, 6, 7 months isn't a whole lot of time, but it is a lifetime to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So in this short lifetime, what did we accomplish, right? I think this short lifetime, it is not about creating. You can't try to reinvent anything, but rather in this short period of time, we're doing a lot of repairing. Which is a very important thing that we oftentimes need to revisit. We do have projects around the world, and some of them slow down its pace a little bit, but some actually accelerated its pace because many owners may say, well, let's take this opportunity to get it done. Okay, so there are people doing that, like our Singapore project at the Ritz-Carlton. So over a sudden, we are renovating 2 most important floors of the hotel. And we want to get it done right by the middle of January, right? So we're accelerating with that. But again, I can't see the material. I can't touch it. So they will show me something on the site, which I will do exactly what I am doing now with the earphone, looking at the video, and walking with them through the site. And I said, can you go there and touch that for me? And they will touch it. I said, how does it feel? They said, well, then they will try to describe to me, right? I said, well, I don't feel it. Oh, how do we do this? Right? So this all becomes something I didn't have to encounter with before, right? And then, of course, I may say, I think it's so important I get to touch it. So is there a possibility you can fly that material to me? So no wonder DHL and FedEx, the business have gone up so much because I've been asking for a lot of materials being sent to me in Taipei, so I can actually touch it and feel it, and build a little palette for myself, so I can then somehow put myself in that cyberspace. Okay, so I can feel the same as they are feeling the space every day. So I've been doing a lot of that, but I didn't have to do that before. Before we had this amazing airline services, hotel services, we just get on the plane, boom, we go, right? We'll go there for 2-3 days. Wonderful time going there to do the job with the people. At the end of the day, a little happy hour here and there. So these are all somehow diminished it, right? Just very suddenly diminished it. So, but we want to be able to accomplish the same morale. So how do we do that at the end of the day or end of each video conferencing? Okay. Now, you may have a good day, you may have a bad day, but how do we minimize the bad day, right? I mean, can you imagine having a bad day through the video conferencing? Think about it, right? You can't even repair. But if you are there physically, you can say, all right, chap, let's go have a drink. But this ain't gonna happen. So reality of it is all these chaos every day, right? That we trying to spend our effort to hold them in order, in good order, so things can progress smoothly. Now, of course, I am in Taipei, so I'm in the sort of Pacific time zone. So I am 7 hours ahead of London, which is wonderful. For you, it's 9 o'clock. For me, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, of course, our project London may call me at 4 o'clock. I say, hurry, because 1 more hour is happy hour. So at least they know. They say we need to call Tony first thing in the morning because he's got a window of 1 hour. So this is actually quite efficient because now it puts in the right perspective for the people proactively taking the certain thing in consideration, right? In my case, I will do exactly the same. I say, oh, before my day is over, let me get London going. Yeah. Okay? Then equally, I say, oh, let me get London going. Then I'm gonna go for my little quick happy hour to juice up. Then I say, oh, I better get New York going because New York's waking up. New York will be waking up in another 4 hours. So I sort of started learning how to work with the clock better. At the same time, I mentioned earlier, Hillary, so that I feel my days are longer, because I add 7 hours for London, I add 4 hours for New York, right? Right there, I'm stretching a typical workday of 9 hours now to almost 24/7 now,
Yeah.
right? So how do I manage that without stress myself out, right? So these are the things that I take it very positively from this pandemic, right? And I feel like, although 2020 hasn't been super productive, right? Because so surrealistic about 2020. And how do I then place 2020 in my memory bank? I can say, well, 2019, I went here, I went there, I stay here, I stay there. Who I had dinner with, and I remember all of that. But 2020 is just very
I
blurry,
think 2020,
right?
Tony, using your analogy, will be remembered as when we were all in our individual emotional treadmills, running at different paces, at different elevations, depending on the day. And I think that's a beautiful metaphor of what this year will mostly be remembered by for most people, because it's whether we've learned things, we've lost things, we've gained, we've repaired, we've awakened. I think it's a very individual story for each of us. And I'm very glad to see you, Tony, very positive. Everything that I've watched your interviews before, you always exude positiveness, and I really welcome that. I think that's really what our industry needs, because hospitality is one of the ones hit very badly, as we all know. So thank you so much for your great insights and for your wonderful projects, and I wish you and your studio great recovery and great moment of repair, and hopefully you get to go home soon, Tony. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tony, for this great opportunity of speaking at Sleep and Eat. Next, we were moved to New York to hear from Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Chi, and I'm the Managing Director of Tony Chi Studio. On behalf of the studio's team, we are super grateful to Sleep and Eat for having us, and especially during this significant time in our history, really encouraging us to rethink what the notion of freedom really means to us. To begin to explore that notion, I first want to welcome you to our home, a space that personally, physically, and spiritually has been a space where I grew up with my brother, my parents, and an amazing design team that spanned across generations and has truly been organizing principle and a way of life that I live today. It has taught me so much about the attitudes and nuances of what design, of what hospitality, and truly what the art of living is. It's really been a gift and a form of freedom that we have here at the studio and that we cherish. And at every opportunity that we have, we celebrate cultures, traditions, and constantly redefine how we apprehend design. My father and mother are extraordinary human beings that have defied all odds and have really created something special here at the studio, and has contributed really amazing spaces and experiences in great cities all around the world. This notion of a life in the making has been very much part of the design process and our way to contain this sort of rich and layered world that we live in, and to distill all of that and tell sort of singular visual stories that can be felt and experienced deeply. The balance between heritage and traditions and creative freedom is an important notion for us. And since many of you know us through our work and have possibly been in the spaces that we've designed in person, I thought it would actually be quite fun to bring you behind the scenes to where the design process actually takes place, and to actually introduce you to a very special designer that we are so proud to have today as our creative design director. And I've personally learned so much from him. William Paley has been practicing with my father for nearly 30 years, and he was the lead designer for Park Hyatt Shanghai, Rosewood London, Andaz Tokyo, just to name a few. And more recently, he's been leading a new beautiful residential project in Toronto on Hills, Tokyo, Japan, as well as the renovation of the Carlisle here in New York City. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I know we've been remote as a studio for quite some time now, so I'm really glad that you're here. Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be back.
So I was saying earlier that there's been some projects recently that you've been leading, from residence project in Tokyo, a new residence that's just opening in California, as well as the Carlisle, which, by the way, they just won this year's Reader's Choice 2020 as the best hotel in New York City. Isn't that exciting?
Always at the Carlisle.
Always at the Carlisle.
Hyper local. Intensely neighborhood specific. New York icon of a hotel. A kind of forever New York that's embedded in the minds of so many people, locally and internationally. It's an extremely unusual project problem. How do you renovate something that everybody loves deeply, that's touched people's hearts throughout history, and everyone has an opinion about? People appreciate the Carlisle for its sense of history and for what it is as a sort of untouched gem, which over the decades has, been what it is. It has a bar that is, I think, universally recognized as a New York bar, a classic that really is unchanged from the time that Ludwig Bemelmans was in residence and painted the walls in exchange for a stay at the hotel. And it's got the Cafe Carlisle that has been home to so many luminaries, great performers of New York, in one of the most intimate clubs in New York. These are things that you cannot touch without destroying. And so we wanted to channel those aspects of the hotel and bring some of that romance into the rooms. I think in the end, what was important to us was to imagine a room that felt in some ways like it was always there, did not depart from what the building conditions, what the architectural features of the building were that were already in place, that framed the difficult and small and sometimes extremely limited views of the city, so that it still presented itself as an urban hotel, that it still reflected its nature as an Upper East Side residential building, and felt, while it didn't always look, not all of the rooms looked out over Central Park, but you felt the presence of the park nearby. And so we wanted to bring some of these aspects into the room in the form of translations into design. As well, New York is a night city. So we needed to have a room that was as fanciful and celebratory during the day as it was at night. That challenge, we worked very hard to make a beautifully lit room. We worked very hard to capture the natural light in the materials of the room, bringing them into the deepest part of the rooms where there was no natural light, and then tying it all back to the very, very celebrated public areas of the hotel, the gorgeous lobby, which still has I think the flavor of Dorothy Draper, one of the original designers of the hotel, as well as Bemelmans Bar and the Cafe Carlisle. So the challenge was to carry the thread from the moment you walk in off of Madison Avenue or off of 76th Street, through the public areas of the hotel, up into the manned elevator, landing on the floor and then all the way into your room. From the moment you shut off the lights, you feel like it's been a continuous journey.
So this year's Sleep and Eat conference theme is really centered around the fact that we've had a challenging year, to say the least, right? And they're trying to explore this notion of redefining freedom. Freedom to us, that I just spoke a little bit about, is really this mindset that we have as a design studio that has traveled across the world, worked on projects from Shanghai to Tokyo to Geneva and to London, even in Hong Kong more recently. That for us, it's really about designing to be able to contain the chaos that's all around us that can just spill out from all of the narratives of all of our hotels and all of our design narratives, but how we nurture the relationships we have with our clients, with our partners, to be able to distill a very clear narrative that can be felt in different projects across different cities. In the Carlisle being an amazing sort of end of a journey from London to Hong Kong and back to New York. So a project that we've recently completed, right, in California, in Los Angeles, that's a private residence that we haven't shared with the world.
Well, when in the studio, we often talk about design, the role of design, and in particular the role of invisible design is about making memories. And I think it's impossible not to bring all of our collective travels and experience in hospitality and times shared with friends, and all of these things stay with us. The things that generate meaningful memories stay with us. And as designers, I think we process those things, right? The response to a space is indeed scientific, but it's also emotional. And it's the emotional part that resonates with us. And it's that emotional response that we want to share with others to convey what it is about a place that's moving to us, or what it is about a place that makes an impression. What we wish to do ultimately is help to formulate and help to have something take form that's in the shape of a homeowner's desires. I think every project is a deep collaboration, and the reason that we work with the same people again and again and again is that closeness through the collaboration process and the openness of hearts and minds in order to be able to engage, to be able to successfully design is a true collaboration.
What was your favorite part of the house in Hollywood Hills? I mean, it's stunning.
It's a difficult question, but I mean, that house is a response to a very difficult landscape, and in some ways, it's at war with the land that it sits on, but it's a noble war, right? It's about taming that harsh landscape of the Hollywood Hills, which is essentially rocks and desert, and making something, a miraculous work of nature, controlled, highly organized, and very specific. But it's to me it's the miracle of that house.
I thought one of the most spectacular elements of the house is the thoughtful curation of furnishings, antiques, art, bespoke items, just a mix of old and new, modern and romantic and contemporary. There's so much content that's so rich and so personal. What was that process like for you throughout the years?
The process is learning what the client likes, right, is helping the client to hone their aesthetic instincts and try to group things in such a way that that they work compositionally with each other.
So to take it full circle, I know that you spent some time in Japan, you know, even before you came to us. And we are really excited to for an upcoming residential project in Toronto Hills, Tokyo, that is upon completion in early next year. Okay.
2021.
Early next year.
Or probably March or April ultimately when everything's installed.
So this one was really a significant project, right, for Tokyo, for the developer. You know, they're a big organization. They are prominent in the city of Tokyo, in the country. This is a residential development that was, when we began, was all about defining Japan 2020. Tell me about your process with the developer and with your craft partners there, and sort of the evolution of your experience as a young designer to now, you know, innovating this, you know, imagined space that is really truly defining modern Japan as we know it.
I think, you know, we talked earlier about working repeatedly with clients, right? So we've been working with Mori Building for over 2 decades, and they are city builders. The great Minoru Mori, who became a friend of Tony's over the years, was a tremendous influence on us. His philosophy of the vertical city was rooted in the great 20th century modernist architecture, modernist architects' theories about how cities are built. And I think in some ways, his vision has been very uncompromisingly executed, but different from the way that we think about it, sort of in the Western architectural canon. Mori Building has been making residential apartment buildings for decades, and this building, which we're doing, it's a 550 unit apartment building. It's probably the biggest project we've ever worked on. It was extremely unruly at times because of its size. The premise was to make a residential tower that serves an international clientele, right? What is it like to be, it's a global living in Japan. What does it mean to live in Tokyo in a modern apartment housing? What makes modern luxury? What makes a glamorous living in Tokyo? So all of these are things that we set out as tenets, as an organizing philosophy for us. And I think that modernity is not about a kind of stark minimalism, and I think glamorousness is not about lipstick and diamonds necessarily. These are things that are in their eternal notions, and then we internalize them and we organize them such that they reflect a kind of inner beauty, right? So how do we bring this concept of modern living to Tokyo?
Welcome back, everyone. I'm sure you enjoyed Alison and William's take on all the different projects, taking us through the narratives and the different layerings of the stories that they're trying to tell with their amazing, amazing design. And I'm now joined by Alison, straight from New York. How are you, Alison?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Great, great. I mean, we all always kind of comment on each other's backgrounds. So are you at the studio?
I am. It's quiet, but the energy is there, so that's good.
Okay, well, that's what we all need right now. So that's for certain. So thanks so much for telling the lovely story that we all just heard, and bringing William into it as well. I think it was such a great way of seeing you actually interview the creative director on so many of these projects, and him telling his story. And I have just a couple of questions for you, Alison, just to wrap up this session and kind of bring it all to a close. So obviously, there's been some great challenges. This is now no news anymore to anyone. So over the last sort of 8 months, what do you think has made your studio stronger? What has really been the sort of this factor that has kind of allowed you to embrace this chaos and make you a better team, maybe even?
No, thank you for that question. We were thinking about that, and we think that by being distant, there's been this increase in focus, that we've learned that presence is not really about just being in a room together. We've had a studio for years, and we all sit next to each other, one desk apart. But now, since we've gone virtual, there's such a greater increase in awareness of each other, how you feel, what you're doing, what you're saying, what you mean, if there's discrepancy there, and that's a good thing, that sense of awareness. And we're responsible as to provide the leadership in team structure for us to sort of focus all around a common goal, to build relationships, to embrace individuality, but while coming together, around a project, not losing sight of what our larger organizing principle for the studio means to us. And with regards to what will come, there's been this call recently for a return to normalcy. This is what people are talking about, and makes us think, well, what really is normal? There are events that come and there are events that go, and events that shift society. And the event that's happening now, it's both a social and economic pandemic. So what is our definition of chaos? Like, is chaos present or is chaos future? Because we do know that whatever we're learning from the past and doing in the present, impacts and creates a new future. So that idea that we believe chaos has always been there, that with this new heightened awareness that we've developed, that we're able to process it a little bit more effortlessly, a little bit more elegantly, we hope. We're in a place that we're incredibly present and cognizant of what's happening around us. And because of this, our goal as a studio is just to remain humble, take it day by day, and everything step by step, because really that's the only way.
And talking about past and present and future, I love your whole idea of balancing heritage and tradition, because I think it's a very big theme, obviously, for you, for your studio, and how you operate. So working across so many cultures on various projects, but also with team members touching so many different cultures, how do you think that has helped the design process in this current environment?
Yeah. We see a healthy culture as a balanced ecosystem. It's really about, it's an ecosystem that's built by humans, or by us, one action at a time. And because, again, what we do today always impacts the future. A healthy system, once it's in works, and it takes on a life of its own, that's what we see as sort of the legacy. That it just starts going, and we let it go, and it just becomes something. But we know we did everything that we could to set it on its path. So that's important to us. And that being said, we do believe it's human nature to see balance, and to try to see nature in harmony, the harmony of design, to balance a perfect room, well, nothing's ever perfect, but a functioning room with an aesthetic narrative that's aligned. That sort of balance is incredibly beautiful and elegant, and it's really difficult to strike that balance. And for us to keep trying, and work it into our design to make it feel effortless, but for people to feel it without having to observe. That's important, and that's sort of the core of our philosophy. So again, balance is very important to us. It's as a word, as an idea. Heritage is the origin of every story. Tradition is daily rituals that over time become culture. So everything is intertwined, and it's very much about the practice of design and hospitality and everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. So
thank you, Alison. You put it together so beautifully that I'm not even gonna comment on that. But I love the idea of balance and these daily rituals, because I think it all starts from the details, right? And these small little things that then build up on something bigger. And I think this is the time right now we're actually probably more cognizant of all of this than we've ever been. And that's definitely painting a different path for the future. Yeah. So I think, thank you so much, Alison, for joining us from New York, and for all your practice and all your team. And we wish you, from everyone from Sleep and Eat, we wish you all the best. And hopefully at one point in the future, we can actually see each other in person, whether it's New York, somewhere in Asia, in London, but I'm sure it will happen.
Absolutely. We feel the same. Thank you so much for having us.